Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Sunni National Reconciliation Front in Baghdad had rejected the announcement made by the Independent Elections High Authority that the Shiite United Iraqi Alliance had won in the legislative elections with 58% of the votes. Adnan Dulaimi, the head of the National Reconciliation List, requested the High Authority to review election results. Otherwise, they will call on Sunni coalitions to repeat the elections in Baghdad. New indications started to surface in Iraq as political groups which had won most of the votes, as announced previously by Elections High Authority, began to search for ways to reshape the political infrastructure on both government and the parliament levels. These political blocs are looking to renew old alliances and form new ones with other political parties and groups, which point to the possibility of forming a new government of national unity.
The new coalitions and alliances will lead to a government of national unity that will include more than 2 or 3 political groups. We will embrace all parties and blocs that had taken part in the political process by participating in the elections. We will meet and negotiate with other groups to form a political platform. The door is wide open for all alliances and coalitions to join in. Secular coalitions will have a negative impact on the national unity, and the political situation is still a complex one. But I believe that it will be a government of national unity with many groups taking part in it.
However, such announcements by these political groups are premature, and the success of the new government will depend in part on the level of negotiations between them, especially as some prominent political groups criticize elections results. Much of the criticism came from the Iraqi National Alliance, led by the former Iraqi Prime Minister, and the Sunni National Reconciliation Front. In fact, these groups had requested the High Authority to repeat the legislative elections.
If the High Authority insists that these election results are final, we will not remain silent. We will request that voting must be repeated in Baghdad and other municipalities, which are suspected of holding fraudulent and unfair elections.
The Independent Elections High Authority had announced earlier the preliminary results of 89% of the polling stations in Baghdad and a number of other cities. While waiting to see what is coming ahead, Iraqi prominent political parties and groups voiced their hope and optimism that all factions and alliances will enter the next stage under the umbrella of national unity. It is the only way for a united and stable Iraq, at least on the political level.
The Yemeni criminal court in Sana'a examined the evidence presented by the district attorney's office in a case involving the assassination attempt on the U.S. ambassador's life. The court requested that the defense team provide evidence corroborating its claim that the main suspect in the case is mentally incompetent and thus cannot stand trial.
The criminal court in Sana'a held a session regarding the case of the 2 suspects accused of trying to assassinate an American ambassador in Sana'a. It examined evidence collected and presented by the prosecutors. Law enforcement officers who engaged in a shootout with one of the suspects arrested 2 men accused of trying to assassinate the ambassador.
I have in my hands 2 bombs that were in the suspect's possession. As the Honorable Court can see, this bomb, which was seized from the suspect, was prepared for detonation.
Prosecutors argued that this criminal act, if it had been successfully accomplished, would have jeopardized the lives of many people. Consequently, it is not only a crime against one person, but also a crime against society as a whole.
One of the bombs was about to explode. If it wasn't for the law enforcement officers, a disaster would have ensued and would have resulted in a high number of casualties.
The main suspect in this case confessed to the assassination attempt. However, he claimed that he was mentally retarded. Meanwhile, the second suspect, Khalil al-Halili, denied taking part in this crime, alleging that he was a taxicab driver hired by the suspect.
How did this idea of killing the ambassador come to you?
It was my idea to kill the ambassador. I was sick and mentally unstable during this ordeal.
The defense team requested that the court postpone the case on grounds that it had evidence proving that the primary suspect is mentally incompetent, and it will not present such evidence until it examines all files and facts of the case.
We have evidence and medical reports which prove that our client is mentally retarded. We will present such evidence after examining the case.
If the defense team proves that the main suspect in the case is mentally incompetent to stand trial, then the court will lack legal jurisdiction over the case. Hossein al-Khatibi al-Alam in front of the criminal court building in Sana'a. The Israeli occupation forces continue its aggression against the citizens of Gaza City, where F-16 planes launched missiles this morning on Beit Hanun, north of the Gaza district, causing citizens psychological and material damage.
In a psychological and physical war, Israeli occupation forces have begun using these methods to target anything that is still or moving. These aggressions reached even this child who is not yet 3 months old. Her eyes witnessed and will continue to witness the most horrible violations being committed against her.
We were sleeping at home. At around 3 o'clock at night, we were surprised by the fall of a missile on our ceiling. The ceiling collapsed directly onto the girl's bed. She has an infection in her eyelid, and the eye itself can't be looked at because the pupil is swollen. She also has injuries to her head.
What did this child do to deserve losing her eye and sustaining severe injuries? She is still not able to breastfeed. We have to feed her using a syringe. The situation is difficult. Israel must know that the message has been sent, but that the Palestinian people's morale is high. Enough, enough, enough.
F-16 planes, which are always hovering over Gaza City, launched their missiles this morning on Beit Hanun, creating psychological and material harm to the residents and the land. They tried to fix all that could be repaired there after waiting a long time to see their land green again.
What happened yesterday was that the occupation forces launched missiles from F-16 planes. The street was destroyed and had to be closed. The drivers took shortcuts through the fields and destroyed all the crops. Nobody is able to sleep here during the night, not even the children. Even the houses in the surrounding area do not have any glass windows left.
Hospitals, which are considered places of treatment and rehabilitation, have also been affected by the Israeli aggressions.
A state of panic has spread among the patients in the surgery unit. The panic was a result of the sound of the windows shattering during the raids in the hospital. And one doctor was injured while he was working.
From here, appeals are made for international protection in the region to stop the psychological and physical aggressions that Israel is carrying out against innocent citizens. From Beit Hanun in Gaza, Fawzia Al-Halwa, Palestine TV.
Armed Palestinians raided a municipal building in Bethlehem in the West Bank, a short time after an Israeli incursion of the city. The incident came 5 days before the city celebrates Christmas. This was yet another of increasing conflicts within the Fatah movement, led by President Mahmoud Abbas, before the legislative elections scheduled for January. Only a few days before the Christmas celebrations in Palestinian lands, armed men from the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, loyal to the Fatah movement, raided the municipal building in Bethlehem and forced workers out of the building, protesting the Palestinian Authority's procrastination in paying the salaries of armed factions within the movement. The situation is a common scene in various cities throughout the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Activists seem to be surprised by the timing and place of the incident in Bethlehem, a city which is preparing to welcome Christian pilgrims who will be celebrating Christmas.
It is regrettable that this incident took place, especially at this time. Their demands do not have to do with our municipality. They should have gone to the place of those who are responsible, either the governor or the police or the presidential headquarters or to the president himself, not to the municipality of Bethlehem.
Perhaps the security deterioration in the Palestinian lands is clearly revealing the internal crisis that is taking place within the Fatah movement after the primary elections were held, and after the submitting of 2 independent lists for the 2006 parliamentary elections. The situation is compelling the movement more and more to postpone holding these elections until the affairs of the Palestinian Fatah movement are put in order through the 6th annual Fatah conference next March.
It is not reasonable to hold elections amidst this security chaos and the presence of armed militias on the ground. First of all, this is a major violation. It is absolutely illogical to go to the ballot booths while Fatah is in a state of chaos and violence. Again, I am absolutely confident that the Palestinian public is judging Fatah for its performance on the ground and not for its political agenda. I am sure that all the Palestinian people are behind and support the Fatah movement's political platform. The Palestinians have a lot of reservations about our performance and our conduct on the ground, which is unconstrained and irresponsible.
The 2 bitter options for the Palestinian leadership, to either hold or postpone the parliamentary elections, have forced it to depend on foreign parties like Cairo, which will send its intelligence director, General Omar Suleiman, to persuade the Palestinian factions, including Hamas, to postpone the elections until further notice. The saying, if Fatah becomes sick, then the entire nation becomes sick, is clearly true. This is evident by the inability to remove doubts surrounding the date of parliamentary elections until Fatah resolves its internal conflict and gives a clear statement that they want to hold the elections. Majid Saeed, Abu Dhabi TV, Ramallah.
Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was discharged from Hadassah Ein Kerem Hospital in Jerusalem around noon today after suffering from a mild stroke on Sunday night. The Prime Minister joked with reporters on his way out of the hospital and said he will be back to work soon. In fact, according to Kadima faction leader MK Rani Baron, the Prime Minister will likely open Sunday's cabinet meeting. IBA's Leah Stern has more.
Looking pale but content, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon left Hadassah Ein Kerem Hospital in what appeared to be good health. The Prime Minister thanked his doctors for their dedicated treatment and expressed gratitude to the people of Israel for their concern over his well-being. Sharon added that he would return to work as quickly as possible in order, he said, to keep moving forward, a play on his new party's name, Kadima. While reporters clamored to get in a question, Sharon joked, "I see that you have missed me." But when asked about political issues such as Bibi Netanyahu's victory in the Likud primaries, the Prime Minister brushed off the questions. The Prime Minister's ill health did, however, refocus attention on the fate of his new Kadima party and how much that fate rests on his aging shoulders. Sharon, 77, had a small blood clot that caused him to suffer the stroke, temporarily affecting his speech. The Prime Minister was treated with a blood thinner, causing the clot to dissolve. Hospital officials indicated that during Sharon's stay, he did not lose consciousness at any time or have any problem with his mental faculties. According to Sharon's doctors and his senior advisor, the stroke will not leave behind any permanent damage or affect his functioning as prime minister.
Well, the prime minister has gone under a very, very mild occurrence, which was spontaneously recovered from. His health is in a perfect condition. All the medical tests has demonstrated no damage and no after effect.
Israel's oldest prime minister ever will now be forced to follow a strict diet and rest. He returned to his Jerusalem residence this morning, not his Negev ranch, in order to remain close to the hospital in the event that he will need further medical attention. Did Sharon's ailment affect his chances of holding on to his job? Not according to the polls, which suggest that the Kadima party continues to hold a commanding lead. This is Leah Stern for IBA News.
A victory for former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in yesterday's Likud primaries. Unofficial but final results showed that Netanyahu gained 44.4% of the vote, while Silvan Shalom garnered 33%. Moshe Feiglin came in third with 12.4%, while Israel Katz received just 8.7% of the vote. Joining us now from our Tel Aviv studio is IBA's Leah Zinder, who's been following the drama in the Likud. Leah, welcome. The pre-election polls were pretty much on target with regard to the outcome of the Likud voting, right?
Absolutely, Yochanan. And indeed, as the polls predicted, Bibi is back in the building. Early this afternoon, Yochanan, 6 years after he left the office of the chairman of the Likud, following his defeat in 1999, Netanyahu returned to Likud headquarters in Tel Aviv, where he was presented with a bouquet of flowers by one of the secretaries. Just before that, Prime Minister Sharon called Netanyahu to congratulate him on his victory. In his office today, Netanyahu refused to answer any questions, but he did make a statement in which he told me, "This is the beginning of a journey to return the Likud to power." This is what he had to say.
In beginning from this day, the journey to bring the Likud back to the leadership of the country. I intend to unite all the forces inside the Likud to rid the party of criminal elements that have entered it, and to make the Likud again a central and important force in shaping Israel's future and its security.
Israel has approved the building of 300 new homes for Jewish settlers in the West Bank. Defense Minister Shaul Mofaz approved construction in Ma'ale Edomim, the largest settlement in occupied Arab territory. He also approved preparatory steps for expanding the smaller settlements of Baraka and Nokdim. The decision violates the roadmap peace plan under which Israel agreed to freeze all settlement building. Israel has nevertheless continued to expand settlements since the roadmap was approved in June 2003. The US Embassy has said Israel should stop settlement expansion and remove illegal outposts. Moving now to other international news. Now, hundreds of millions of children suffer discrimination and exploitation, but are invisible to the world. That's the latest from the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF. Its annual State of the World's Children report looked at the fates of trafficked and abused children. Some of them are sold for sex. Most disappear from mainstream society. Others, including street children, are denied basic rights such as schooling and healthcare. The document says 1/3 of an estimated 150 million children worldwide each year don't even get registered. That number is growing. These children may never officially exist, and that makes it easy for governments to ignore their plight. The report says new laws are needed to stop their worldwide abuse and exploitation.
Abused and exploited across the world is very hard to capture, which is one reason they remain excluded and invisible. But we do know some numbers. Every year, more than 50 million children throughout the world are not registered at birth. Without a formal identity, they are less likely to get a space in school or the health care they need. Millions of children who are orphaned, many of whom live on the streets or in institutions, have been stripped of their first line of protection, a loving and nurturing family. They are easy prey to being trafficked, abused, abducted, sexually exploited, and more.
The Middle East should be turned into a nuclear-free region, leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council said Monday, voicing concerns over Israel's and Iran's nuclear ambitions. The head of the oil-rich six-member bloc appealed to the international community to make the Middle East, including the Gulf region, a zone free of weapons of mass destruction at the conclusion of a two-day annual summit. But it made no strong statement about Syria's disagreement with the United Nations over a UN investigation into the killing of former Lebanese Prime Minister Hariri, which delegates had said would also be high on the agenda. The statement expressed the Council's satisfaction with Syria's welcome of the UN resolution related to the Hariri probe. It also reaffirmed its keenness to maintain the sovereignty and security of both Lebanon and Syria. Amid mounting international pressure on Iran over its nuclear program, GCC Secretary General Abdulrahman al-Atiyeh urged Tehran to join the group in its pledge to keep the region free of nuclear weapons. The United Arab Emirates Foreign Minister demanded environmental guarantees and protection from Iranian nuclear plants on the Gulf Coast following the summit. The UAE Minister Abdullah Rashid Nuaimi commented on a message from Arab League Secretary General Amr Moussa to the GCC summit, in which Moussa expressed his concerns about Israel's nuclear program. Nuaimi said he hoped that Amr Moussa would take into consideration the 6 GCC member states when he talked about the concerns of the Arabs in reference to Iran's nuclear program. The United States believed Iran's nuclear program was a cover for weapons making. Tehran insists its nuclear facilities are designed for civilian energy purposes. Israel was widely believed to possess around 200 nuclear warheads, making it the only nuclear power in the Middle East, although it has never admitted to having atomic weapons. In its final statement, the GCC stressed Israel's failure to join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran has signed. The leaders called on Israel to adhere to the NPT and to open all its nuclear installations for international inspection. All heads of GCC states comprising Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE attended the summit, with the exception of the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Jabir al-Ahmad al-Sabah, who was represented by Prime Minister Sabah al-Ahmad al-Sabah. The summit's final statement, dubbed the Abu Dhabi Declaration, talked about the need for a radical modernization of the education systems. Gulf states, which possess enormous oil and gas reserves, are under pressure to reform their stagnant political systems, since Washington launched a campaign to promote democracy in the Middle East in the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 attacks and Saddam Hussein's fall in Iraq in 2003. The GCC also applauded the legislative elections in Iraq.
Iranian and Azeri presidents were present, where the project of transferring Azerbaijan's natural gas to Nakhchivan via Iran opened on Tuesday. The pipeline is to take 350 million cubic meters of natural gas to Nakhchivan. This comes as the Azerbaijan Republic, under a 25-year contract, will deliver 80.5 million cubic meters of natural gas to Iran. Following the ceremony, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad told reporters Iran sees no limitation on boosting of ties with the Azerbaijan Republic. President Ahmadinejad described as positive his talks with the Azeri officials and added promoting relations in the fields of transportation, energy, oil and gas, as well as political and international issues came up at the talks. The Azeri President Ilham Aliyev in turn said all-out ties between Tehran and Baku can boost security in the region. The pair also signed cooperation documents to enhance economic and political ties.
Indian Oil Minister Mani Shankarayar says Tehran has assured New Delhi that it will honor its commitments to supply liquefied natural gas (LNG). Shankarayar said that on Tuesday and added Iranian officials have reaffirmed that the agreement is valid and will be fully operational on schedule. Iran and India have sealed a deal to export 5 million tons of LNG annually for 25 years as of the end of 2009.
A documentary film honoring the life of Nana Taous, a prominent teacher and a longtime activist, premiered yesterday in the Algerian Cultural Theatre. Ms. Taous made history because she had set a good example for Algerian women who value their country's culture and heritage. The producer presented his documentary film that lasted 45 minutes and included charged events reflecting on the life and accomplishments of this role model. The Minister of Culture, Khalda Toumi, and a number of producers and artists attended the presentation.
Taous, who just turned 100 years old, had made history by diligently working hard to bring women's issues on the stage before, during, and after the great Algerian Revolution. Nana Taous, a longtime teacher and activist, descended from one of the most prominent tribes in Algeria. Many Algerian women had learned from her because she has been the role model for many. The memory of her will never die in the minds of those who had been touched by her determination, kindness, and goodwill. The producer of this film, Sayed Ali Nazif, reflected on the life and the many accomplishments of this idol.
The objective of my film is to put women who have had great lives and contribute to history in the spotlight.
This documentary film premiered yesterday and was attended by the Algerian Minister of Culture, Khalda Toumi, and a number of prominent artists, producers, and historians. The unfolding events of the story, which had a strong impact on the audience, depicted and reflected on the life and accomplishments of Taous.
God is my witness. I am the wife of Qazim. We went together to make jihad to liberate the country. My husband Qazim died by the will of God. When I got caught myself, I was not afraid. Death and fear are the same. I do not care.
The Ministry of Culture is proud to honor those who contribute to society a great deal. There is a similar event in Japan where great people, whom they refer to as human treasures, are honored. In Algeria, from its north to south, and from its east to west, we have thousands of those called human treasures, including many women.
This documentary film attracted the attention of many people because it told a great story about Taous and her unique relationship with her martyred husband, and it also brought to the spotlight the role played by Algerian women in society. She took part in shaping the history of Algeria by keeping and protecting its heritage and culture and handing it down to the next generations.
Truth, freedom, and national unity, and long live President Bouteflika.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.